Hi there, I'm Shannon Stubbs, the Member of Parliament for Lakeland and the Shadow Minister for Natural Resources. This week, the Liberals imposed their tanker ban, Bill C-48. I need your help for e-petition 1490 to withdraw the Liberals' tanker ban. This bill is an attack on the oil sands and on pipelines. It targets only vessels carrying crude and persistent oils. It doesn't enforce the voluntary exclusion zone, which already applies to all vessels of all kinds and to foreign tankers in the region. It specifically bans only the on and offloading of crude and persistent oil at the ports. It's clearly designed to kill any current or future oil pipelines for export from that coast. There's no ban on any other Canadian coast or on foreign tankers. And the safety track record of Canada's energy infrastructure and transportation systems, including pipelines and tankers, has always been and is world leading. The evidence shows tankers have safely and regularly transported crude oil from Canada's west coast since the 1930s. The Liberals did not consult Indigenous communities impacted by their ban. And 35 First Nations communities have signed on to build the Eagle Spirit pipeline, which would start in Bruderheim in my riding of Lakeland and end in Grassy Point on BC's north coast. It could be one of the biggest private sector infrastructure investments in Canadian history. It's been called the largest First Nations endeavor in the world. It's supported by all the Indigenous communities, every single one along the route in both provinces. But the Liberals' tanker ban is a roadblock to this pipeline and to opportunities for dozens of First Nations. Indigenous communities who want to make their own decisions and pursue responsible resource and economic development, want to tackle socioeconomic challenges, reduce poverty, create jobs, and leave a legacy for future generations. Despite all the noise to the contrary, the reality is 500 of the 630 First Nations in Canada are open to pipelines and to oil and gas development. But the Liberals did not consult Indigenous people before imposing this ban. I want to share with you the words of Eva Clayton, the first elected female president of the Nisga'a government. She said, quote, Prime Minister Trudeau told a meeting of Canada's modern treaty nations last fall that he, quote, was inspired to hear from Indigenous governments taking concrete steps to manage their lands and resources and to promote the social and economic health and stability of their communities. That's what the Prime Minister said. Eva says, so why is his government proceeding with Bill C-48, the proposed moratorium on oil tankers calling at ports on the BC North Coast and preventing the 7,000 Nisga'a people from taking the concrete steps available to us to promote our social and economic health? This bill offends the spirit of our treaty with Canada and BC, which commits all parties to work towards greater economic independence for the Nisga'a people. It is a very serious commitment for ourselves and our generations to come. The Nisga'a Nation is committed to being self-sustaining and to bringing an economic base to the north. We believe that a deeper dialogue with the federal government on this proposed moratorium would allow us to achieve the balance between building a strong economy and protecting sensitive ecosystems while moving towards true and lasting reconciliation. Instead, the Trudeau government, without more than a general introductory dialogue, announced legislation that conflicts with the principles of self-determination that lie at the heart of the Nisga'a Treaty and undermines our shared objective to help the Nisga'a Nation become self-sustaining. A moratorium like that proposed in Bill C-48 exists nowhere else, and for reasons inexplicable to us, does not apply to the south coast of BC or to Canada's north or east coasts, despite tankers carrying foreign oil routinely calling at eastern ports without restriction. Oil tankers from Alaska go past our coast every day and will continue to do so under the proposed moratorium. Eva says, why does the proposed moratorium single out BC's north coast? The Nisga'a Nation is and always will be committed to protecting the integrity of our land and marine environments, and we do not support any particular oil export project. But we want all economic development options to remain available in the same way they do for First Nations on the south coast, the north coast, or anywhere in eastern Canada, so that we can have an evidence-based decision-making process about what projects go ahead in our treaty area. We signed the Nisga'a Treaty with Canada and BC after 113 years of negotiations, determination, and patience. Eva says it was a landmark day for Canada and its Indigenous peoples. We are advocating for our treaty, for our people to have a say in what can happen and can't happen where we live. It's a matter of principle. We believe that decisions about any export projects can only be made after a thorough environmental assessment and review of evidence. The Trudeau government has recognized Indigenous peoples' right to, quote, self-determination, including the right to freely pursue their economic, political, social, and cultural development. It has introduced 10 principles to guide Canada's implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It has also promised to help bring Indigenous people out of poverty and to ensure that we play a meaningful role in environmental assessment. It is hard for us to reconcile these commitments, Eva says, and the promises made by Canada in our treaty with Bill C-48's removal of our right to determine if we would support this kind of economic development. Economic opportunities are limited in Northwest BC. Forestry and fishing are both in long-term decline, and while tourism is growing, it is not yet a year-round employer and revenue generator. Ottawa is rushing ahead with Bill C-48 without having shown us why it is needed. It appears to be poised to close the economic development door on the Nisga'a and First Nations on the North Coast while preserving opportunities for our neighbours to the south, north, and east. Bill C-48 won't stop diesel and oil barges from traveling between coastal communities. It won't stop smaller, older, oil-powered vessels, those without sophisticated technology, detailed safety and marine protection plans, or escort tugs or pilots from plying coastal waters. Eva concludes, our government is committed to creating an economic base that meets the requirements of our treaty. We owe it to our people and their futures to preserve the opportunity to have different economic development options available to all of us. We will not continue to see our way of life eroded and consign our children and grandchildren to life without meaningful opportunities based on an ill-conceived policy decision. Eva's standing up for her community, and she's standing up for all Canadians. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to help lift the voices of Indigenous people who support and want oil and gas development and pipelines, but are being drowned out by domestic and foreign-financed anti-energy activists. I've sponsored e-petition 1490 to withdraw this tanker ban. The petition closes shortly on June 5th, 2018. Please sign it, share it on social media, and with everyone and anyone you know who champions Canadian energy.